I just returned from Barcelona after sealing the biggest distribution deal in our winery's history, only to find my brother had been appointed to run everything in my absence. 3 years of work, countless sleepless nights negotiating with the most prestigious hotel chain in Europe, all culminating in a multi-million-dollar contract that would put Devereux Estates on the international map. And what was my reward? A letter on my desk. No warning, no gratitude, just a letter, and a name. Travis. He's never harvested a single grape, but now he sits in the CEO chair thanks to them. But they forgot one crucial detail. I carried all our key partnerships in my head. When our biggest client canceled their $6 million contract, they finally realized they'd pushed the wrong person out the door. My name is Rachel Devereux, and this is how I took back what was mine. I've always found a certain poetry in vineyards at dawn. The way the first light catches the dew on the vines, how the mist clings to the ground before the sun burns it away. I was standing among our oldest Syrah vines when my phone buzzed with the confirmation that would change everything. Contract signed. Congratulations. Ms. Devereux, Maison de Roland, is proud to partner exclusively with Devereux Estates across all our European properties. 3 years of work, countless flights between Arizona and Europe, hundreds of tastings, presentations, and negotiations. I'd built this partnership from nothing, convincing one of Europe's most prestigious hotel chains that a boutique winery from Verde Valley could supply their entire network with premium wines that would make their guests forget about French vintages. My flight from Barcelona landed at Phoenix Sky Harbor at 9:42 p.m. I drove straight to the winery, despite the jet lag hammering behind my eyes. I wanted to see the vines, to walk through the production facility, to touch the barrels of wine that would soon grace the tables of the most exclusive restaurants in Europe. This wasn't just a business triumph, it was personal validation. When my father died 5 years ago, everyone assumed Devereux Estates would falter. A boutique winery built on passion rather than business acumen seemed destined to become another failed family venture. Instead, I transformed it. From a modest operation producing 5,000 cases annually to a respected label delivering 20,000 cases of meticulously crafted wine, we won awards, we earned wait lists, and now, we had secured international distribution that would double our production and triple our revenue. The main building was dark when I arrived, which wasn't surprising given the hour. I used my key to enter through the back, passing the aging room where hundreds of French oak barrels housed our future. The familiar smell of wine, wood, and the faint hint of fermentation welcomed me home. My office was at the end of the corridor, overlooking the eastern vineyard blocks where our best Cabernet Sauvignon grew. I flicked on the light, expecting to see the organized chaos I'd left behind 3 weeks ago. Instead, my desk was immaculately clean, too clean. The stacks of contracts, tasting notes, and marketing materials were gone. My collection of corks from significant vintages had disappeared from the glass bowl I kept them in. The walls, once decorated with awards and photographs documenting our rise, were bare save for our original founding certificate, and there, in the center of the desk, was an envelope bearing the Devereux Estates letterhead. I knew something was wrong before I even opened it. Call it intuition, or simply the culmination of subtle signs I'd been ignoring for months. The way my mother, who owned 51% of the company since my father's death, had started excluding me from certain board discussions. How Travis, my younger brother by 4 years, had suddenly taken an interest in the business after spending a decade pursuing a modestly successful acting career in Los Angeles. The letter was brief, typed on the expensive stationery we reserved for communications with our most valued clients. Dear Rachel, the Board of Directors of Devereux Estates is pleased to announce the appointment of Travis Devereux as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. This strategic decision will allow the company to pursue new directions in an evolving market while honoring our family legacy. Your contributions as commercial director have been noted, and we invite you to continue with the company in an advisory capacity, focusing on existing client relationships. Please arrange a meeting with HR to discuss the transition of your responsibilities. Sincerely, the Board of Directors, Devereux Estates. I read it twice, my hands perfectly steady. There was no shock. Not really. Just the cold confirmation of something I'd sensed coming but had been too busy, too successful to address. The Board of Directors was essentially my mother. Eleanor, Travis, and 2 family friends who had invested minor stakes when my father started the winery 15 years ago. I didn't slam my fist on the desk. I didn't cry. I didn't call my mother and demand an explanation. Instead, I methodically opened my laptop and downloaded every contact, contract, and piece of correspondence I'd accumulated over the years. Not the company files, I wouldn't steal those, but my personal notes, the relationships I'd cultivated, the promises made over glasses of wine and handshakes that no contract could capture. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, removed the leather-bound notebook where I kept handwritten notes about every wine we'd ever produced, the exact conditions of each vintage, the subtle adjustments to fermentation, the barrel selection decisions that had defined our signature style. This wasn't company property. This was my life's work, my palate and experience captured in ink. I placed the letter back on the desk, perfectly centered. I turned off the light and walked out, locking the door behind me. As I drove away from Devereux Estates, the vast expanse of vineyards gleaming under the moonlight in my rearview mirror, I made a single call. "Michelle, it's Rachel. Yes, I just got back. Listen, there's been a change in management at Devereux. I want you to hold off on announcing the partnership until you hear from me again. Yes, everything's signed, but let's just say I need a few days to ensure the transition won't affect quality. You have my word I won't let you serve anything less than what I promised." Michel Roland, the beverage director for the entire hotel chain, had become more than a business contact over the years of negotiation. He trusted me, not the label. His hesitation was brief before he agreed. I hung up and continued driving past the city limits, toward Sedona, where a small cabin awaited me, a personal sanctuary I'd purchased and renovated with my own bonus money 3 years ago, a fact known to very few people in my life. It was time to retreat, to think, and to decide exactly how this story would end. The cabin sat on 2 acres of rugged land, nestled among junipers and pinyon pines, with a view of Cathedral Rock that changed colors throughout the day. It wasn't large, just 1 bedroom, a modest kitchen, and a living area dominated by a stone fireplace, but it was mine, free and clear of family entanglements. I dropped my suitcase inside the door and headed straight for the small wine cellar I'd built in what was once a storage closet. Among the carefully arranged bottles, I selected a 2018 Syrah, my personal favorite from the vintages I'd overseen, the one where I'd insisted on extending barrel aging against the consultant's advice, resulting in a complexity that had earned us our first 94-point rating. The night air was cool as I settled into the Adirondack chair on the porch, wine glass in hand. My phone had been buzzing consistently since I left the winery. My mother, my former assistant Jessica, even Travis. I silenced it without checking the messages. They'd had plenty of time to talk to me before making their decision. Instead, I pulled out a notepad and began writing. Not an angry letter or a resignation, those would be unnecessary given the circumstances, but a list. A detailed inventory of every relationship I'd built, every contract coming up for renewal, every distributor who dealt exclusively with me. I marked the ones who would follow me without question and the ones who might waver without the right incentive. By midnight, I had filled 3 pages with names, dates, and potential leverage points. It wasn't a plan for revenge. I'm not that melodramatic, but rather a clear-eyed assessment of my value, the value they had discarded with a form letter and a family betrayal. I slept soundly that night, wine and exhaustion carrying me into dreamless sleep. When I woke, the sun was already high, illuminating the red rocks outside my window. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be, no calls to make, no crisis to manage. The sensation was foreign, almost uncomfortable. I made coffee and checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 28 text messages, and 39 emails. I scrolled through them briefly, noting the escalating concern in my mother's messages, the professional restraint in Jessica's, and the awkward attempts at explanation from Travis. One message caught my attention not for its content, but for its sender, Samuel Wright, CEO of Horizon Wines, our biggest competitor in the region. Heard about the changes at Devereux. Would like to discuss potential opportunities. Dinner tonight. I set the phone aside without responding and spent the day hiking the trails behind my property, letting the physical exertion clear my mind. By sunset, I'd made my decision I would wait and watch. Travis had wanted the throne. Now he could have the crown's weight. For 2 weeks, I maintained my silence. I hiked during the day, read books I'd been meaning to get to for years, and each evening, I opened another bottle from my collection and updated my notes. Not Devereaux wines exclusively. I had vintages from around the world, reference points I'd collected during my travels. Jessica was the first to break through my self-imposed exile, arriving unannounced with groceries and determination. "Your mother gave me this address," she said when I opened the door, brushing past me into the kitchen. She's worried. She's worried about the business, not me," I replied, watching as she unloaded fresh vegetables, artisanal bread, and a selection of cheeses. Both, actually. Travis is struggling. Jessica had been my assistant for 4 years, managing my calendar, handling correspondence, and increasingly, contributing to blending decisions. She was loyal, but not blindly so. "Not my problem anymore," Jessica paused, a package of pasta in hand. "Michelle Rowland has been calling the office every day. Travis doesn't know how to handle him." I felt a small flicker of satisfaction, but kept my expression neutral. "What else?" Over the simple dinner she prepared, Jessica filled me in on the chaos that had followed my departure. Travis had immediately announced a new vision for Devereaux Estates, focusing on younger demographics and lifestyle branding. He'd brought in consultants who knew nothing about wine, but everything about influencer marketing. He'd even floated the idea of a non-alcoholic wine line, which had nearly caused our winemaker, Anton, to resign on the spot. "And the Maison de Roland deal?" I asked, pouring us each a glass of Pinot Noir not ours, but a lovely Oregon vintage I'd been saving. Jessica's hesitation told me everything before she spoke. "Travis told them you were no longer with the company but assured them everything would proceed as planned. Michelle asked for you specifically. When Travis couldn't produce you, Michelle said they needed to reassess the partnership." I nodded, taking a measured sip. "And my mother?" "Publicly supporting Travis, privately panicking. The board meeting last week was tense. We finished dinner with lighter conversation, and as Jessica prepared to leave, she handed me a sealed envelope. "Your official termination package. HR insisted I deliver it. There's a non-compete clause they want you to sign in exchange for 6 months severance." I took the envelope with a smile. "Thank you for bringing this." After she left, I tossed the unopened envelope into the fireplace and watched it burn. No severance was worth limiting my future options. And besides, Arizona's non-compete laws were notoriously difficult to enforce, especially when family businesses were involved. The next morning, I received a text that wasn't entirely unexpected. "Family dinner, Sunday at 7. Mom's house. Please come. Travis." I didn't respond, but when Sunday evening arrived, I found myself driving the familiar road to my childhood home, a Spanish-style mansion nestled among the oldest vines my father had planted. I'd dressed deliberately in a black dress that was both elegant and severe, paired with the ruby earrings my father had given me when we won our first major award. The house was lit up. My mother's vintage Mercedes parked in its usual spot beside Travis's ostentatious new Range Rover. I parked my more modest Audi next to it and took a moment to prepare myself. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was reconnaissance. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her face a carefully composed mask of maternal concern. "Rachel, darling, I'm so glad you came." She embraced me briefly, the scent of her signature Chanel enveloping me. Eleanor Devereaux had been a formidable business partner to my father, handling the financial aspects while he focused on the wine. After his death, she'd retreated somewhat, allowing me to take the operational reins while maintaining majority ownership. "Mother," I responded simply, stepping inside. The dining room was set with the good china the Limoges set reserved for important guests and family celebrations. Travis stood as I entered, his Hollywood good looks slightly strained around the eyes. "Sis, it's good to see you," he said, coming around the table to embrace me. I allowed it but didn't return the gesture. "Travis," I acknowledged, taking the seat across from him. My mother sat at the head of the table, a position my father had occupied for so many years. Dinner proceeded with excruciating politeness, my mother and Travis carrying most of the conversation while I answered direct questions with minimal elaboration. The food was excellent, my mother's longtime housekeeper, Maria had prepared my favorite roast duck with cherry reduction, but I barely tasted it. It wasn't until dessert was served that Travis finally broached the subject we'd all been avoiding. "So, I wanted to share some exciting developments at Devereaux," he began, setting down his fork. "We're taking the brand in a bold new direction. I've been in talks with several wellness influencers about collaborations, and we're exploring a line of non-alcoholic wines targeted at the health-conscious consumer." I took a deliberate bite of chocolate soufflé, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "The consultants believe we can tap into a whole new demographic," my mother added, her voice too bright. "The premium wine market is so saturated, but this could really differentiate us." I set down my spoon and looked directly at Travis. "And how do you plan to handle Maison de Roland canceling their $6 million contract?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face paled, and Travis's confident smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" he managed finally. "Michel Roland called me yesterday," I said, which wasn't entirely true. I'd called him, but the outcome was the same. "He informed me that after careful consideration, they've decided to go in a different direction. Something about concerns regarding continuity of quality and relationship management." My mother set down her wineglass with excessive care. "You can fix this. Rachel, call him back. Tell him what?" "That despite removing the person he spent 3 years building a relationship with, despite having a CEO who can't tell the difference between Merlot and Cabernet Franc, they should still trust us with their multi-million-dollar beverage program." I folded my napkin precisely and placed it beside my plate. "The contract is void. Mother, they've already signed with Horizon." This last part was a calculated lie. Michelle hadn't decided yet, but I knew Samuel Wright had been circling, waiting for precisely this kind of opportunity. Travis leaned forward, desperation edging into his voice. "You have to help us. Rach, this is still your family's company." "Dad's legacy." "Dad's legacy," I interrupted, my voice finally showing a hint of the anger I'd been suppressing, "was excellence without compromise, not chasing trends or Instagram followers. He built this company on relationships and quality, not marketing gimmicks." I stood, smoothing my dress. "I'll see myself out. Thank you for dinner, Mother." As I walked toward the door, my mother called after me. "Rachel, please, let's discuss this reasonably." I paused, turning back to look at them, my mother, still elegant in her distress, and Travis, the golden child who had never had to earn his place. "There's nothing to discuss. You made your decision. Now you can live with the consequences." The door closed behind me with a satisfying finality. The following weeks unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. The industry is small, and news travels fast. When word spread that I was no longer with Devereaux Estates, my phone began ringing with offers. Former distributors called to express their concern about the direction of the winery. Restaurant owners who had personally selected our wines for their lists reached out to see where I would land next. I took the calls but made no commitments. Each conversation revealed another piece of the puzzle that was becoming Travis's spectacular failure. Sales were slipping. Key accounts were putting orders on hold. The non-alcoholic wine initiative had been met with industry ridicule. Samuel Wright finally caught up with me at a regional wine symposium I'd attended purely to maintain connections. "Rachel Devereaux," he said, approaching me during the lunch break. "The woman of the hour." Samuel was in his 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for ruthless business tactics balanced by genuine passion for winemaking. Horizon Wines had started around the same time as Devereaux Estates, but had pursued a different strategy: higher volume, more mainstream appeal, aggressive distribution. "Samuel," I acknowledged with a professional smile, enjoying the symposium. "Let's not waste time with pleasantries," he said, guiding me toward a quiet corner. "I want you at Horizon, Chief Operating Officer, full autonomy over production decisions, and a 15% equity stake." The offer was substantial, more than generous. Really? Samuel knew my value. "I'm flattered," I replied. "But I'm not looking to jump into another corporate structure right now. This isn't about your family drama, Rachel. This is business. You're the best commercial mind in the region, and we both know it. Horizon could go global with you at the helm." I studied him, recognizing the ambition that mirrored my own. And what happens to Devereaux in this scenario? He shrugged, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. Without you? Without the Roland contract, they'll limp along for a while on reputation, then either sell or downsize significantly. Your brother doesn't have the knowledge or the connections to save it. His assessment was accurate, which made it all the more painful to hear spoken aloud. Despite everything, the thought of my father's dream withering under Travis's mismanagement filled me with a profound sadness. I need some time, I told him. Don't take too long. This offer has an expiration date. I left the symposium early, driving directly to my cabin to think. Samuel's offer was tempting on many levels: financial security, creative freedom, the satisfaction of success while watching Travis fail. But something about it felt hollow, like accepting second place when I'd earned the championship. That evening, as I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, ironically, a Horizon Cabernet that was objectively excellent but lacked the distinctive character I'd always strive for at Devereaux, my phone rang, my mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but some combination of curiosity and lingering filial duty made me swipe to accept. "Rachel," my mother said, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "I'd like to see you. Dinner tomorrow at the house, just us." "No Travis." "No Travis," I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. When I arrived the following evening, the house was different, subdued somehow. My mother greeted me in the kitchen rather than the formal entrance, dressed in simple slacks and a cashmere sweater rather than her usual elegant attire. She was cooking herself, something I hadn't seen since my father died. "Risotto," she explained, stirring the creamy rice. "Your father's recipe." I hung my jacket over a kitchen chair and moved to the counter to pour us each a glass of wine from the open bottle, a Devereaux Chardonnay from my second year as director, the vintage that had first put us on the critics' radar. "How bad is it?" I asked, handing her a glass. My mother accepted the wine but didn't drink, continuing to stir methodically. "Travis isn't working out," she said finally, the admission clearly painful. "The Roland contract was just the beginning. 3 more distributors have reduced their orders, the tasting room numbers are down, Anton is threatening to leave, and he'll take his entire production team with him." I leaned against the counter, swirling my wine and watching the legs form on the glass. "Why did you do it, Mother? Why Travis?" She sighed, finally setting down the wooden spoon and taking a fortifying sip of wine. "It wasn't my idea. Not originally. The board, specifically James and Robert, suggested we needed a more marketable face for the company, someone with Travis's natural charisma and connections to a younger demographic. James and Robert were the family friends who'd invested in my father's vision, each holding a 10% stake. They'd always been silent partners, content to collect their dividends without interfering. And you agreed. I thought you would still be there, handling the actual operations while Travis became the public face. I never intended for you to leave." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You replaced me as CEO with my brother who knows nothing about wine, and you didn't think I would leave. What exactly did you expect, Mother?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "I expected you to fight, Rachel, not to walk away." The admission hung between us, reshaping my understanding of the past month. Had this been some bizarre test, a power play designed to prove my commitment? "That's not how loyalty works," I said finally. "You don't test people you value by taking away what they've earned." My mother turned back to the risotto, adding a splash of wine from her glass. "No, I suppose not. It was a miscalculation, one I deeply regret." We ate dinner in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room, the conversation careful but not hostile. My mother filled me in on the details of the company's rapid decline, the marketing disasters, the alienated distributors, the confused employees. Travis, it seemed, had grand visions but no practical understanding of how to implement them or what made our wine special in the first place. "He's talking about redesigning the labels to appeal to millennials," my mother said, unable to keep the horror from her voice. My father had designed our original labels, elegant and timeless, with the family crest embossed in gold. And the board, James and Robert have gone quiet. I think they realize their mistake, but aren't sure how to fix it without admitting fault. As we finished our meal, my mother reached across the table to touch my hand, a rare gesture of affection from a woman who had always maintained a certain emotional distance. "Come back, Rachel. Help us save your father's legacy." I withdrew my hand gently. "It's not that simple." "What do you want?" "Name your terms." I studied her. This proud woman now humbled by circumstance. "I need to think about it. This isn't just about my position or title." She nodded, understanding. "Take the time you need. But Rachel, we don't have much time left before the damage becomes irreversible." I left with a promise to consider the request. Driving back to my cabin under a sky brilliant with stars, the night was clear, the air crisp with the promise of autumn harvest season. When the real work of winemaking begins, by morning, I knew what I wanted. I spent the day drafting a detailed proposal, complete with financial projections and organizational charts. This wouldn't be a return to the status quo. This would be a complete restructuring, with me at the center, not by default, but by design. I delivered the document to my mother's house personally, handing her the folder without comment. "Read it," I said. "Discuss it with the board. You have 48 hours to decide." My proposal was straightforward, but bold. I would return as co-CEO with Travis, but with clearly delineated responsibilities. I would handle all production, distribution, and client relationships. Travis would manage marketing, public relations, and tasting room operations areas where his charisma and social connections could be assets rather than liabilities. Additionally, I required a 35% ownership stake to be transferred from my mother's controlling interest. This would give me effective veto power over board decisions when combined with my existing 5%. Finally, I demanded complete autonomy over wine production decisions, with Anton reporting directly to me rather than to the board or Travis. It was an aggressive play, essentially asking my mother to surrender control of the company she and my father had built. But it was also the only way I would return, not as an employee or even an executive, but as an owner with real power to protect what mattered. 2 days later, while I was pruning the small herb garden behind my cabin, my phone rang. My mother's voice was terse when I answered. "The board has agreed to your terms, with one modification, 25% ownership instead of 35. I paused, secateurs in hand, calculating. 30%, and you retain 26. That leaves 5% each for Travis, James, and Robert, with the remaining 24% divided among the minor shareholders." The silence stretched as she considered. "Done," she said finally. "When can you start?" "I'll be at the office tomorrow morning. Have the paperwork ready for my signature before I set foot in the building." "It will be done." I hung up and turned back to my garden, methodically trimming the overgrown rosemary. Tomorrow would be soon enough to begin the real work of rebuilding. The next morning, I arrived at Devereaux Estates at precisely 8:30 a.m., dressed in a charcoal suit that projected both authority and understated elegance. The administrative assistant at the front desk, a new hire I didn't recognize, did a double take when I introduced myself. "Ms. Devereaux. We weren't expecting... we didn't know you were coming in today. Is my mother here?" "Yes, in the main conference room with the lawyers." I nodded and headed down the familiar corridor, noting the subtle changes that had occurred in my absence. New artwork that didn't quite match the established aesthetic. A display of gaudy marketing materials featuring Travis's smiling face. A stack of boxes containing sample bottles of what appeared to be the ill-fated non-alcoholic wine line. The main conference room door was closed. I opened it without knocking, causing the 4 people inside to look up in unison. My mother sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 attorneys I recognized from the firm that had handled our business affairs for years. Across from them sat Travis, uncharacteristically subdued in a button-down shirt and blazer. "Rachel," my mother said, rising. "Right on time." I took the empty chair at the opposite end of the table, directly facing my mother. "Are the papers ready?" One of the attorneys, David Chen, who had been our corporate counsel since the beginning, slid a thick document across the table. "Everything is agreed. Ms. Devereaux, the ownership transfer, the revised corporate structure, and the delineation of responsibilities." I read through the documents carefully, pen in hand, occasionally making notes in the margins or requesting clarification on specific clauses. No one spoke during this process, the tension in the room building with each turned page. Finally, I looked up. I want one additional clause. If Travis interferes with any production or distribution decision, his role reverts to brand ambassador only, with no executive authority. Travis opened his mouth to protest, but my mother cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Add it," she told David, who nodded and began drafting the language. While we waited, I turned to Travis. "This can work if we both respect the boundaries. You have talents, I don't use them to strengthen the brand, not change what makes it special." His expression was a complex mixture of resentment and relief. I just wanted to contribute, to be part of what Dad built. "You can," I assured him, my tone softening slightly. "But not by pretending to know things you don't. Be authentic, that's what will actually connect with those younger consumers you're so eager to reach." The amended agreement was presented, reviewed, and signed within the hour. When the final signature was affixed, my mother's, appropriately enough, a subtle shift occurred in the room. The power had been rebalanced, not just on paper but in the invisible dynamics that govern family businesses. "I'd like to address the staff," I said, standing. "Everyone, including the production team and tasting room personnel." My mother nodded. "I'll have them gather in the barrel room in 20 minutes. As people filed out to make the arrangements, Travis lingered. "I really did think I could do this," he said quietly. "I thought it was just about having vision and confidence." I gathered my copy of the agreement, tucking it into my portfolio. Winemaking is an art built on science and tradition. "Travis, vision matters, but so does knowledge. So does respect for the process." He nodded, a flicker of genuine understanding crossing his features. "I'm glad you're back, really." I offered him a small smile, the first genuine one I'd directed his way since my return. "Let's make Dad proud, each in our own way." 20 minutes later, I stood before the assembled staff of Devereaux Estates in the barrel room, the heart of our operation where hundreds of oak vessels housed our future vintages. The space was cool, dimly lit, and filled with the rich aroma of wine slowly transforming into something extraordinary. It was the perfect setting for what needed to be said. "For those who don't know me, or who have forgotten in my absence," I began, my voice carrying easily in the hushed space. "I'm Rachel Devereaux. As of today, I'm returning as co-CEO, with primary responsibility for production, quality control, and distribution relationships." I paused, looking over the assembled faces, many familiar, some new, all attentive. "The past month has been challenging for Devereaux Estates. We've lost focus on what makes our wines special. We've pursued trends at the expense of tradition. That ends today." I moved slowly between the rows of barrels as I spoke, running my fingers along the staves, reconnecting physically with the process I'd missed. Our strength has always been in our commitment to quality without compromise, in knowing that great wine isn't made in marketing meetings but in vineyards and barrel rooms. Through careful attention to detail and respect for the craft, I stopped beside Anton, our winemaker, a burly Ukrainian with a chemist's precision and an artist's soul. Anton and his team will once again have full autonomy over production decisions, answerable only to me. The experimental non-alcoholic line is suspended indefinitely. A ripple of relief passed through the production staff. Travis will continue as co-CEO, focusing on marketing and public engagement areas where his natural talents can shine without interfering with what we do best. Travis, standing near the entrance, gave a small nod of acknowledgement. To our distributors and partners who have stood by us during this transition, we will demonstrate through actions, not words, that Devereaux Estates remains committed to excellence. To those who have stepped back to wait and see, we welcome the opportunity to earn your trust again. I completed my circuit of the room, returning to the center where I'd started. My father founded this winery on the belief that the Verde Valley could produce wines to rival any in the world. He was right, and under my leadership, we will not only honor that legacy, but expand it, not through gimmicks or trendy packaging, but through the timeless pursuit of perfection in every bottle. I raised a glass of our signature Syrah that had been prepared for the occasion. To Devereaux Estates past, present, and future. The staff raised their glasses in response, and I saw in their faces what I needed most: not adulation or even forgiveness, but a renewed sense of purpose and pride. There was work to do, relationships to rebuild, and a harvest approaching that wouldn't wait for human drama to resolve itself. The real test would come in the weeks and months ahead. But standing there among the barrels containing wines I had helped create, surrounded by people who shared my passion for the craft, I felt a certainty that had been missing even before my ill-fated trip to Barcelona. This was where I belonged, doing what I was meant to do. The transformation wasn't immediate, real change never is, but it was steady and deliberate. My first priority was reaching out personally to each of our key distributors and partners, including Michel Roland. "I'm back," I told him over a video call from my restored office. "Permanently and with the authority to ensure every bottle meets the standards we discussed." His relief was evident even through the digital connection. "This is excellent news. Rachel, we were prepared to cancel the contract entirely, in fact. The paperwork was being drafted. And now? Now we proceed as planned. Though perhaps with a slightly delayed timeline, I will need to visit in person to verify that the changes are more than cosmetic. Of course, we'll arrange a full tour and tasting. And Michelle, thank you for your patience." With the Roland contract provisionally back on track, I turned my attention to the internal operations. Travis had hired 3 marketing consultants whose sole contributions had been expensive presentations full of buzzwords and mock-ups of trendy labels that betrayed everything our brand stood for. I didn't fire them immediately. Instead, I invited them to join me for a full day in the vineyard, helping with the pre-harvest assessments, followed by a blind tasting of our wines against competitors in similar price points by evening. As we sat in the tasting room reviewing their revolutionary marketing plan, they had gained at least a rudimentary appreciation for what actually differentiated our products. Their revised proposal, delivered a week later, maintained some of their innovative social media strategies, but abandoned the ill-conceived packaging redesign and lifestyle branding attempts. Travis surprised me by adapting to his recalibrated role with unexpected grace. Once freed from the pressure of pretending to understand wine production, he thrived in customer-facing situations. His natural charm and storytelling abilities made him an ideal host for VIP tastings and events. We established a clear protocol he would entertain and engage. I would answer any technical questions about the wine itself. The arrangement worked better than I had anticipated. Within 2 months, tasting room sales had increased by 20%, and our wine club membership was growing again after a significant dip during Travis's brief solo tenure. My mother maintained a careful distance from day-to-day operations, though I occasionally caught her watching me during board meetings with an expression that mingled pride and wariness. We were cordial, but not close. Too much had happened for an immediate return to familiar ease, but there was a foundation for rebuilding, and for now, that was enough. The harvest that year was exceptional. Perfect weather conditions had created ideal sugar levels and phenolic ripeness